Hello everyone, welcome back to the Putra tale. And today, I will be bringing you a horror story, titled The Apartment Above Me Was Empty, a disturbing true horror story. But before we get into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and like this video, so that I am motivated to upload horror stories every day. And this story, I moved into that apartment complex last fall. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place outside the city where I could finally breathe. It wasn't perfect, but it was affordable, and they told me the unit above mine was vacant. It's been empty for months, the leasing agent said. You'll love the peace and quiet. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. Calm. Almost too calm. But then, it started. You know that eerie stillness that settles over a place after midnight? That kind of silence that makes your ears ring, like they're desperate to fill the void with something. Anything? That was the kind of night I had. It was about a month after I moved into the apartment. Just far enough from the city to be quiet, but close enough to not feel isolated. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My own space. I'd just gotten off a long shift, threw on a hoodie, warmed up some leftovers, and planted myself on the couch like I always did. Comfort in routine, right? The TV flickered low in the background, some rerun I'd seen a dozen times. My eyes were barely open. I remember being caught in that weird half-sleep, where your brain starts drifting but your body hasn't followed yet. And then, it started. A single creak. Then another. Slow. Rhythmic. Heavy. At first, I thought it was the building settling. Old buildings do that. Pipes knock. Floors creak. You get used to it. But this wasn't random. It was paced, deliberate. Like someone walking directly above me. I froze. Muted the TV. The sound didn't stop. Heel to toe. One step at a time. From one end of the ceiling to the other. Then again. Over and over. Back and forth. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Too clear. The thing is, I knew that the unit above mine, 3B, was supposed to be empty. The leasing agent had even joked about how peaceful it would be. Said no one had rented it in months. Maintenance went in weekly just to make sure the pipes didn't freeze. But someone, or something, was walking up there. I sat there, paralyzed. Not scared yet. Just tense. Trying to make sense of it. My brain ran through possibilities. Maybe someone had moved in and they just didn't update the records. Maybe it was a raccoon or something weird in the attic. Hell, maybe the sounds were coming from the building next door and echoing through the walls. That kind of thinking, that need to explain everything, kept me grounded. At least for the first night. But even after the footsteps stopped, I didn't move. I didn't fall asleep. I just stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, waiting for another sound. Another step. Another creak. Nothing came. Just silence. Deafening, thick silence. The next morning, I went about my day like everything was fine. Took a shower. Made coffee. Headed to work. But that sound kept replaying in my mind, over and over, like a stuck loop. I didn't mention it to anyone. Why would I? I didn't want to be that tenant. The one who complains about ghosts in the ceiling like it's a bad horror movie. I told myself I was tired. That I'd imagined it. But I couldn't let it go completely. So after work, I swung by the leasing office. Real casual. Just asked if Unit 3B was still unoccupied. They said yes. Still empty. Still checked weekly. Still quiet. But it wasn't quiet. Not last night. Still, I let it go. What else could I do? There was no proof, and no one to talk to about it without sounding insane. I went home that night and tried to pretend nothing happened. Poured a drink. watched TV, scrolled through my phone, did anything I could to drown out the possibility that I wasn't alone. But the ceiling stayed quiet. No steps, no creaks, just the soft hum of my fridge and the faint sound of traffic in the distance. Almost like the night before hadn't happened at all. And that's when it got under my skin, not the footsteps themselves, but the silence after. Because silence meant it was waiting. What made this first event so disturbing wasn't just the sound. It was the certainty. The knowledge that what I heard was real. That I hadn't imagined it. That something had been up there, moving, pacing, living. And the fact that no one believed me? That just made it worse. There's something deeply unnerving about hearing footsteps in a place where no one should be. It chips away at your sense of safety, at your logic, at your sanity. The floor above me should have been empty, dead quiet. But it wasn't. And somehow, I knew that wasn't going to be the last time I heard it. After that first night, the footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate, I tried everything I could to make life feel normal again. I cleaned the apartment twice over, started sleeping with music on, even rearranged the furniture in my bedroom like that would change anything. But something had shifted. It's hard to explain unless you've felt it yourself. That sensation that the space around you is no longer yours. That you're being watched, but not by anyone you can see. It was as if the walls had taken a breath in, and they were waiting to exhale. The footsteps didn't return right away. For several days, the ceiling remained quiet. And I told myself maybe it was just old pipes. Or an animal. Or my brain playing tricks on me from lack of sleep. But a week later, the sounds came back. Worse this time. It started just past 1 a.m. I was already awake. Couldn't sleep. My eyes were fixed on the dim light coming through the blinds. The air was still. Too still. And then it came, the familiar creaking of footsteps overhead. Only this time, it was faster. More agitated. Pacing turned into dragging. Like someone, or something, was pulling something heavy across the floor above me. I could feel it in the walls. In the floor beneath my feet. It was like the building itself was groaning under the weight of it. I grabbed my phone and started recording. I needed proof. I needed someone to hear what I was hearing. But listening back to it the next day, it was just faint creaks. Barely audible. Nothing like what I'd experienced in the moment. That made it worse. The idea that this thing, whatever it was, wanted to stay hidden from everyone else but me. And then came the voice. It was late, closer to 2:45 a.m., when I heard it. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling like I had almost every night since the first incident. Just waiting. And right when my eyes started to close, I heard it. A voice. Not loud. Not clear. But definitely there. It was soft, muffled, like someone speaking through layers of drywall. I couldn't make out the words, if there were even any words to make out, but the tone was unmistakable. Repetitive. Gentle at first, almost like humming. But the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. Like the rhythm wasn't natural. Like it was a phrase, repeated over and over, just barely outside the edge of comprehension. It wasn't coming from outside. It wasn't the wind or the pipes. It was directly above me. I held my breath. There was this heaviness in the air. Not fear exactly, something deeper. More primal. Like I had just recognized something ancient that my body knew before my brain could catch up. And in that moment, I was completely still, eyes open, heart pounding, the world narrowing to just that voice in the ceiling. And then it stopped. Just for a second. Long enough for me to exhale. And then, 3 knocks. Sharp. Cold. Measured. Right above my headboard. So loud, I swear I felt the dust fall from the ceiling onto my face. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just moved, like my body took over, I grabbed my keys, my shoes, my wallet. I didn't even turn the lights off. I just left. Out the door. Down the hallway. Into the car. I didn't care if I looked crazy. I didn't care what the neighbors thought. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I just drove. I parked in a grocery store lot 2 blocks away and sat there for hours, staring at my dark apartment through the windshield, engine off, windows fogging. That whole time, I didn't move. I didn't think. I didn't even cry. I just sat there, feeling like I had come this close to something I wasn't supposed to witness. Eventually, I fell asleep. Not real sleep, just that exhausted haze your brain slips into when it's trying to survive. When the sun came up, I drove back home. The building looked normal. My door was still shut. Nothing seemed out of place. But I didn't go inside right away. I stood in the parking lot, staring up at the window of Unit 3B. There was nothing there. No movement. No light. Just an empty apartment, according to everyone except me. But it wasn't empty. I knew that now. I didn't need proof. I didn't need to hear another knock. I could feel it in my bones, the presence that had moved in above me. Or maybe it had always been there. Maybe I was just the first person to listen. After that night in the car, I didn't really come back, not in the way that mattered. Sure, my body walked through the door. I ate, I slept, I did the bare minimum to pass as functioning. But my mind stayed on the ceiling. On what was hiding just a few feet above my head. The footsteps never stopped. Every night, between 1 and 3 a.m., they returned like clockwork. The pacing. The dragging. The quiet murmur of that voice, low, garbled, sometimes humming, sometimes whispering something just out of reach. It didn't even try to hide anymore. It wanted me to hear it. Wanted me to stay awake. And it worked. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating right. I started leaving lights on in every room. My phone was always fully charged and pointed at the ceiling, recording. Not because I still hoped someone might believe me, but because I needed to have something to hold on to when I started doubting myself. Something I could replay, even if the audio never quite captured the terror the way it felt in person. But the thing that finally broke me? It was the sound of my name. I swear I heard it one night. Whispered from the ceiling, long and slow. Stretched in a way no person should be able to say it. That sound didn't just rattle me, it claimed me. Like it had finally learned who I was. That's when I knew I had to go up there. I didn't even decide it. It just happened. I was done sitting in fear. Done waiting. I had to know. Even if it meant seeing something I couldn't unsee. So a few nights later, just past 2 a.m., I waited. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in one hand, the other clenched so tight my knuckles popped. And just like always, the steps began. Above my head. Calm, patient, back and forth across the floor of Unit 3B. I got up. The hallway was colder than it should have been. Dead quiet. No hum from the walls. No ticking of the thermostat. Just me and the sounds above. I climbed the stairs slowly, every creak of the steps echoing through the narrow corridor like it didn't want me there. I stood in front of the door to Unit 3B shaking. Not from fear, at least not entirely, but from adrenaline. Like every nerve in my body was waiting for something to go wrong. And it almost did. Because as I stood there, hand raised to knock, I realized something. The footsteps didn't stop when I got close. They kept going. Louder. Closer. As if they knew I was right there on the other side of the door. As if they wanted me to hear. I raised my hand again, heart thundering in my chest, and knocked. Just 3 soft taps. The footsteps stopped immediately. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound had been, pressing against me like a weight on my shoulders. And then, the doorknob twitched. Not violently. Just a single, tiny movement. Like someone testing it. A twist of metal, slow and cautious. I didn't wait to see what came next. My legs moved before my brain told them to. I turned and ran, down the stairs, across the hall, into my apartment. I slammed the door and slid down the inside of it, hands shaking so hard I dropped my phone. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down. I stood in the middle of the room until the sun came up, eyes on the ceiling, waiting for footsteps that never came. The next morning, I went straight to management. I didn't ask. I didn't plead. I demanded they open Unit 3B while I was there. I told them I'd heard things that no one should be hearing from an empty apartment. I didn't care if I looked insane. I needed to know. At first, they hesitated. Said the unit was sealed. Said the last maintenance check showed nothing unusual. But I must have looked unhinged enough, because eventually they gave in. We walked up the stairs together. A maintenance guy unlocked the door while the manager stood behind me, arms crossed like she didn't really want to be there. The second that door opened, I knew. The air hit us like a wall. Not just cold, but heavy. Thick with dust, like no one had breathed it in for years. The sunlight from the hallway barely pierced the gloom inside. No furniture. No boxes. No signs of life. Just an empty room, stale and undisturbed. At first, I thought I'd gone mad. That maybe none of it had been real. But then I saw the floor. Dust covered everything in that place, except for a trail. A circular pattern pressed into the dust. Bare footprints. Deep. Human-shaped. No shoes. No socks. Just toes and heels and arches, over and over and over, worn into the same loop around the living room. Exactly where I'd heard the pacing. I didn't go any further. I didn't ask questions. I didn't stay for explanations. I left the building, got in my car, and started packing before the sun even set. I moved out that night. No goodbye. No forwarding address. I didn't tell anyone where I went. I don't care what was in that apartment. I don't care if it was a ghost, or something worse, or something else. I just know it saw me. It knew me. And it didn't want to be alone anymore. I still think about it sometimes. When the house gets too quiet. When the night feels too still. I think about that doorknob turning. And I pray. I never hear my name in the ceiling again. I don't know who or what was up there. Maybe I was never alone. Maybe I was living under something that was never meant to be disturbed. All I know is that apartment was never truly empty. And I still wake up at 1:30 a.m., listening for footsteps on ceilings that aren't there.